Hey, everybody, let me, Happy New Year. Let me get started by rereading the remote script and we'll jump into our agenda. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting will be conducted via remote means in accordance with applicable law. This means that members of the public body, as well as members of the public, may access this meeting via virtual means. Participants may access this meeting through the remote meeting link as posted on the meeting agenda and through the town's online calendar. When required by law or allowed by the chair, persons wishing to provide public comment or otherwise participate in the meeting may do so by raising their hand or otherwise signaling their intent to speak. This meeting will be recorded. Please take care to mute your microphone unless you have been recognized by the chair. We will now confirm attendance of members. Please respond with present if you are on the call. Elise Mayalowski.
Present.
Lucia Lopez. Matthew Ronca.
Present.
Michael King.
Present.
Parker Happ.
Present.
Jane Moran.
Present.
Karen Wills.
Present.
Vikasath Prati.
Present.
And obviously, I'm here, Rob Benson. Staff, John Gelsich.
Present.
And Lori St. John.
Present.
All right, thanks, everybody. So the only one we're missing to start is Lucia. If she joins at some point, someone try to signal me or let me know.
Rob, Lucia said she's not feeling well, so she's not gonna be here tonight.
Okay, okay, great. All right. Well, not great, but it's good to at least know. All right, let's jump into our agenda. We're going to start with Nebraska Street subdivision. So there should be a set of plans that we need to vote on. Is Miss Mark Joe? Are you able? Do you want to give us an overview of what you're looking to get done here?
Sure. My part is as you know, is the plans and the stormwater. The plans have been revised, stormwater calcs revised, and there was a memo issued today that all the outstanding items have been cleared up. As far as we're concerned, we're all in sync with T&B on the plan set.
John, what's your perspective of the situation, or is that your perspective too?
Yep, we got the memo from Gene this morning, and they've addressed the comments. So the plans that Mark Vedant submitted last week should be good to go.
Does anyone on the board have any questions?
So through the chair, Joe, did you submit the Mylars?
I have them right here next to me.
Okay. So we'll need to get those. So through the chair, if these are approved tonight, the board will just have to come in and sign. We'll need 5 signatures on the Mylars. So Joe will bring them in tomorrow so that people can come in and come in time.
Okay. If seeing none, no comments from the board, I'd like to entertain a motion that the planning board endorse the subdivision plans for Nebraska Street entitled Diana Farm, 6 Nebraska Street, Hopkinton, Mass, Assessors Map U-19, Block 29, Lot 0, prepared by J.D. Mark Vedant and Associates, Inc., dated August 9th, 2024, last revised November 16th, 2024.
So move. Second.
All right.
Motion.
Great. Roll call vote. Elise Mayalowski.
Yes.
Matthew Ronca.
Yes.
Michael King.
Yes.
Parker Happ.
Yes.
Jane Moran.
Yes.
Karen Wills.
Yes.
Vikasath Prati.
Yes.
And Rob Benson is yes.
So
All
through
right.
the chair, just a point of order on that one. Question to Joe. November 16th, was that the current date or the newly revised date?
The newly revised is December 23rd.
Yeah, so the board may want to reconsider that motion and change it to December, I'm sorry, what was it?
23.
23rd. Because there was an issue with the dating of the plans, and sorry I didn't catch this before the vote happened. there was an issue with the dating of the plans where certain sheets were only revised, so they didn't change the date at the front, but then that kind of made it confusing because the decision was after November 16th. So Joe modified it to have the decision or to have the plans dated December 23rd. So the board could just modify the motion and then revote to get that new date. Apologize.
All right, let me see if I can word this correctly. I'd like to entertain a motion to adjust the revised date from November 16th for the approval we just voted on to December 23rd, 2024.
So moved.
Second.
All right, roll call vote. Elise Mayalowski,
Yes.
Matthew Ronca,
Yes.
Michael King,
Yes.
Parker Hap,
Yes.
Jane Moran,
Yes.
Karen Wills,
Yes.
Vicar South Prati,
Yes.
and Rob Benson is a yes. All right. Should be good to go.
To the chair, just a quick clarification to John, basically. John, regarding the signatures, I thought you can sign behalf of the board. Is that still active, or is that something that I missed? On
Yeah,
the
that's only on A&Rs. That's not on
Oh.
subdivision plans.
Got it. Got it. Thank you. Thank you for the clarification.
All right, best of luck, Jeff. Thanks for coming before the board.
Great, thank you.
All right, we're on to agenda item 1.2. Establish a Chester Street bond amount. Peter, I'm not sure if I'm going to pronounce this correctly. Veneto?
You're pretty close. Venuto.
Venuto. If you'd just like to give us an overview of what you're looking to have done. I don't remember this coming before the board in 2020.
Through the
So
chair,
here's-
I could provide an overview if there's.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
So this was for the Chester Street extension for the McDonald's. Back in 2020, they got the extension of Chester Street. Chester Street was basically a paper road that is now being built out to have one house lot. And so what they have to do that is put the bond in so they can get the building permits. It's just a one lot road, so it's not a huge undertaking. So that's why the bond is so small comparatively. So board just needs to, it's just like any other subdivision, the board needs to approve the bond amount. They will bring the bond, either cash or third party, to the town. We'll send a letter to the treasurer, and then that will allow them to get the building permits for the house.
All right, terrific. Does anyone on the board have any questions? All right, hearing and seeing none, I'd like to entertain a motion that the planning board set the performance guarantee amount for the Chester Street subdivision of $15,170.
Mr. Chair, could I just say something before you go to the motion?
Sure, we have
It's
discussion.
actually-
Go ahead.
It's actually two lots. It's not one lot. There's two lots.
Doesn't change anything. Yeah, there might be.
Okay. All right, I just wanted to make sure, and we already gave the amount of money requested to the, John, is it being held by your office?
I'll have to look. I don't know. I didn't know we got it.
I brought a check in weeks ago, but it's there.
Okay. Somebody has it then. Yeah.
All right. Let me restate. I'd like to entertain a motion that the planning board set the performance guarantee amount of the Chester Street subdivision at $15,170.
So moved.
Second.
Thanks, Matthew. Thanks, Michael. Roll call vote. Elise Mayalowski,
Yes.
Matthew Ronca,
Yes.
Michael King,
Yes.
Parker Hap,
Yes.
Jane Moran,
Yes.
Karen Wills,
Yes.
Vicar South Prati,
Yes.
and Rob Benson is a yes. All right. On to agenda item 1.3.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Peter. Good luck.
Good luck.
Good night. Good night.
So I feel feel like we're kind of, we don't have Lucia's input here, but I'd like to entertain a motion. Like, first off, is there any comments for Lori about the meeting minutes before we get into motions for December 16th? All right, I'm gonna entertain a motion and then we can have discussion if we need to. I'd like to entertain a motion that the planning board approve the minutes for December 16th, 2024 as written.
So moved.
Second.
Thanks, Matthew. Thanks, Michael. Any discussion? All right, roll call vote. Elise Mayalowski,
Yes.
Matthew Ronca,
Yes.
Michael King, Michael, we didn't hear you.
Didn't hear me? Yes.
Parker Happ,
Yes.
Jane Moran,
Yes.
Karen Wills,
Yes.
Vikas Prati,
Yes.
and Rob Benson is a yes. All right, we're on to agenda item number 2. So the applicant for 0 Benson Road asked for a continuance. Is there any other update, John, or is that that's the latest?
That's the latest that I've heard, but I believe the applicant's attorney is on the call.
Yes, I am. Thank you. The applicants so far have not been able to find a piece of land, but we are in the process of trying to pursue some other avenues that we hope to be able to present to the board that would be acceptable to them, but I have nothing concrete right now. And I don't want to waste your time tonight trying to piece something together. So that is why the continuance, and I am also going to be on vacation for a couple of weeks. That's why we're looking for an extension into mid-February.
Do we have a exact date when you're looking to continue to?
I believe I put the February 17th meeting in my letter on Mr. Benson.
Thank you.
So through the chair, planning board is not meeting on the 17th. We are meeting on the 10th or the 24th.
Then I would request the 24th, please. I'm not in town on the 10th.
Is there any, Matthew, go ahead.
Thanks, Rob. I think that we've been talking about this since the current planning board's been assembled. I'm a little concerned that we're reaching the end of our term and this just keeps getting continued. I also am worried that it's not fair to the abutters who have continued to attend meetings and just have it continued. If there isn't an end in sight, I wonder if we should just close the public hearing and let the applicant reapply when there's a better plan, if there's not something coming up in sight soon.
I hear your concerns, Mr. Ronca. Again, at this point, we're trying to explore some other options that are available and they're just not firm yet. And that is why the continuation. I will certainly discuss with my clients about looking at what you have recommended, but we would like an opportunity to come before you on the 24th if we can, please.
John, what are the, we typically don't, we typically give a lot of applicants a lot of leeway to continue. John, what is the, like, if it was to continue and continue and to continue, what is the fee to reapply? I don't remember.
So I think your question has 2 different questions in it. It doesn't have to continue and continue and continue. It's up to the board to determine whether you want to continue the hearing. If the board is done continuing, you can render a decision, right? And usually when you have to render a decision and the applicant is not comfortable with that decision, they will elect to withdraw. Not always. There's obviously caveats to that, but the board can just say, you know, we need to hear something by this date, or we're going to render a decision. And then that might do something. So that's one part of the question. The second part of the question is, should they withdraw and elect to reapply later on? They could always request that the board waive the fee for the application, since they made the application and nothing was really finished on it. That's been done in the past. So I don't know if there's a reduction in fee in our fee schedule. I doubt it, but that has been practiced in the past, is that if somebody withdraws and then reapplies shortly thereafter, they've requested a waiver of the fee and the board has granted it in most situations, I believe.
All right, I tend to agree with Matthew that I don't want this to continue forever, but I do think it is I'm willing, obviously, like to hear the boys' opinion, but I think continuing it to the 24th and then giving them one more follow-on opportunity, maybe at the meeting after that, to come to a proposal. Other than that, I think we're gonna start making some decisions. So my kind of timeline would be February 24th, so like March 10th. If we don't have something kind of by then, we're gonna make a decision, will be my thinking. Is anyone I'm willing to listen to anyone else on the board, any other opinions? And Joe, Mr. Antonellis, I'll get to you in a second.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree, Rob, too.
Yep, I do too.
All right,
I do as well.
I think that's reasonable. Mr. Antonellis, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm not going to spend any time on it. The board, I think, it has a right to do what they're doing. I was going to suggest that what is frustrating for the abutters is that the meeting keeps getting continued, and we don't have an opportunity to to review what the proposal is going to be. You have a subdivision plan that's been placed in front of you that has obviously been vetted and reviewed relative to that, but the criteria, which is the substitution of land for the land that was supposed to go to the land trust, and the piece that affects my client. When we come to a meeting with nothing else put in there, I don't think it's fair for the applicant to go to the next meeting and have Attorney Wolf and the applicant submit something just, on the Friday before the meeting. I checked the agenda this morning and checked the website on a regular basis, and the last document that's been filed has been the request for continuance in my letter of November 26, 2004. So to the extent that the board is going to give the applicant a opportunity to extend, I think because the extension results basically in a modification to the modification, there's nothing in the application that's before you that tells us what they're going to do, that whatever it is that they're going to do should be posted on your website in enough time to allow the abutters to review it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Antonellis. I think that makes sense. Let's what I'd like to do at this time is to continue it to the 24th. We're not going to come to a vote or decision without giving you the opportunity to review it and provide your perspective. I think that is only fair. So let's tonight's meeting, I'd like to move along. I think we have a plan to continue it to the 24th, and but we have a plan not to continue this indefinitely.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Benson.
You're welcome. All right. I'd like to entertain a motion that we continue the 0 Benson Road amended definitive subdivision plan public hearing to February 24th.
So moved.
Second.
Thanks, Vic. Thanks, Mike. Roll call vote. Elise Mayalowski,
Yes.
Matthew Ronka,
No.
Michael King,
Yes.
Parker Happ,
No.
Jane Moran,
Yes.
Karen Wills,
Yes.
Vikasath Prati,
No.
and Rob Benson is a yes. What is that for? Were you keeping track? John, what was the vote tally?
5-3.
Okay. All right, so it's continued to February 24th.
Thank you all.
But as you can tell from the board's vote, they are getting tiresome.
We understand, Mr. Benson.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're on to agenda item 3, 4852 Main Street, /6 Cedar Street. So at the end of the last,
Go ahead.
wait,
sorry.
1 second, let me just kind of recap from my perspective. At the end of our last meeting, we didn't have a kind of a clean wording of all the conditions or findings, or maybe some of either or both. So we continued it to this meeting, and the hope tonight is we can get to a decision, but Mr. Bingham, go ahead. You seem anxious.
Well, I heard dead air and I thought it was my turn, so.
No, go for it.
There's nothing worse than that sound, the sound of nothing. So my name's Neil Bingham. I'm counsel for the applicant here, and as you know, this is the proposed project is for a new 3-story mixed-use building. First floor is going to be retail. Second and third floor will be residential. We're in the downtown business district, and as a result, this is an as-of-right use under the bylaw. So when we were last here, we were discussing in some detail the December 11th letter, peer review letter from Weston and Sampson. And I think we got through the entirety of it, but had a couple of issues, got some feedback and heard some comments from the board and from others. And we were not in a position to finish, in part because the conditions were not ready, and in addition, because we wanted to think about these other issues. So we've used the time since December to think about those issues. And as I recall the issues, it was really these 3. One was a question of ventilation of the garage and whether that garage should be ventilated naturally or it should be ventilated mechanically in some way. The second issue that I think was still being discussed was the trash removal. And the third was the landscaping on the northerly side of the building, which is primarily in shade, and whether our choices were appropriate. So as a team, we've given each of those issues a great deal of thought. We've had a chance to review the conditions as well. And I think that the best thing to do is for us to very, very briefly present a little bit of what we've done since December on each of these issues. So I'm going to ask Rich Rankin to speak first. He's going to discuss a little bit about the garage ventilation and the trash removal, and maybe show a little bit about the minor architectural changes that have occurred since. And after Rich speaks, Matt Merva of Bowler Engineering will address some of the landscaping issues. Our team is here. We're here to answer whatever questions you may have, but we're hopeful that we can do this quickly and efficiently and get to a good place this evening. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Rich Rankin.
Thanks, Neil. For the record, Richard Rankin, Rankin Associates. I'd like to start by running through some revisions to the plans and the elevations that address some of the board's concerns that were brought up at the last meeting. Some of these also address the Design Review Board and Historic Commission's comments from previous meetings. We've made some modifications that we think are enhancing the design, and we'll continue to do that as we go forward. Starting with the south elevation, no real changes here. I think the biggest changes were, again, adding some additional brick, which is a request. I think the board, I guess all the boards agree that some more brick would tie this into the context a bit better. So we've added some brick, and we've modified some panels and accentuated the piers. And I think from last meeting there was a change to the lighting. On the west elevation, really no major changes. I think we'd introduced some brick previously, added another little component here. We had made this modification to the lower parking level. But as we've gone through and analyzed the garages themselves, what we've come up with is really desire, I think, on our part, from a design standpoint and mechanical standpoint, to mechanically ventilate these garages. So with that, I think the idea for us is to maintain on Cedar Street the openness here with some security grading. But on the second level of parking, I think our idea here is to introduce some glazing, which I think carries through on some of the residential unit design above, at least from a facade standpoint. And so we've added that, and that allows us to then mechanically ventilate. I think on the north elevation, the same holds true, except for the fact that on the lower level, we've introduced some panels in the opening. So this lower level is completely enclosed, and we've chosen some various openings to install glazing in to allow some light in. And we've also discussed internally whether or not we want to look at more of a translucent system to cut down any glare that may occur from the parking activities and so on. East elevation, really no major changes. I think we haven't shown this of late. We've shown it in previous meetings, but this is it. This is the courtyard area. These are the two ends of the wings. This is our open parking below. We've added that same glazing on that upper parking level adjacent to the courtyard. Now, with regard to the plans, again, no major changes here, at least on this particular level. Right now, as I discussed, we're keeping this open with security grills. This gets closed off here where the openings were previously with panels. And then the rest of this is all below grade, all the way around. So again, no major changes on the lower level. On the upper level, again, we've added some glazing on this upper level, glazing here as well. And we've also, from the trash standpoint, we've decided to increase and centralize the trash and recycling area on this floor adjacent to the parking entrance. And we're currently working with our vendors on an operational plan that centralizes the trash and recycling collection. This being off-street completely and internal to the project. So that's a part of our recycling plan, or trash and recycling plan, to get, there was a concern, I think, previously of pickups and traffic imposition at this location, but we're going to show it and plan on it in this location on that upper level of parking. So with that, I will hand it over to Matt Merva, landscape architect from Bowler Engineering, to discuss some of the concerns I think that were brought up with regard to the landscaping.
Good evening, everyone. Matt Merva from Bowler, principal and head of our landscape architectural group. Eric DeBrule is also with me tonight in case there are any questions on civil engineering. But really just wanted to highlight one of the concerns from the abutter at 8 Cedar about the nature of the landscape at the buffer between the two properties there along the north facade of our building. I think one of the concerns was, the light glare coming in from parking operations on our property, which I think has been mitigated by the architectural modifications that Rich has put together. But in terms of the species that were being selected for the buffer along here, the question I think came up, are these going to be shade tolerant, and are these plant materials going to survive? We feel comfortable that we're using a mixture of different types of arborvitae along this edge. And while this is going to be the shadier part of the building, we do feel that they will survive in this location. We'll monitor them, obviously. And, being in that shady condition may slow the growth rate a little bit, but we do not have concerns that those materials aren't gonna make it there. So we're comfortable with what's there. We're certainly willing to listen to any suggestions that the abutter might have at the 8 Cedar location, but at the time of planting, those materials are going to be 6 to 8 feet tall, and the normal growth rate might be a foot a year for something like that. If it's a little slower in this condition because of the shade, I think we're still going to have some good efficacy and kind of day one impact from that material as soon as it goes in. And that in combination with the architectural modifications, hopefully alleviate any concerns that we have there. So glad to answer any other questions that anyone has on landscape. Otherwise, I can turn it back over here.
Yeah, I think to the board, but that concludes really the presentation. We'd be glad to answer any questions at this point.
So one comment was made about the brick. Yes, I'm a proponent of the whole entire building being brick. I don't know that we can't. I don't think the planning board can force that. But if you're taking an opinion poll, I would like the whole building to be brick. In terms of trash on the across from like the post office, is there a trash area on that level of the parking garage as well? Like I saw the larger area on like the second level of the parking. But I don't know if I missed it or didn't see it or.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, the plan currently is to have a larger trash room on the upper level of parking, not so much on the Cedar Street side. Working with the vendors on logistics to kind of enter that courtyard area for kind of quick removal and off. Maybe.
So in theory, they can come in there and not be on the like a side of a key card gate. And if they have to, wheel trash receptacles or whatever to be taken away.
Correct. So it alleviates any sort of barrels waiting on the side of either Main Street or Cedar Street. It's pretty well isolated. And the trash room is fairly central with all of the residential units above that upper level of parking. That's the current plan.
And this is also not necessarily planning board specific, but on the northern view, like the view from like where 8 Cedar Street would look at this building, it looked like there was balconies on, are they really balconies or are they just like some type of architectural detail?
The plan is on the exterior to have them more Juliet style balconies, which are, kind of faux balconies. On the courtyard side, we're still contemplating that they may be actual balconies, but that's a design decision we'll make going forward. But as we kind of presented previously, the idea of having balconies on the perimeter, we were worried about what they might turn into, based on the tenancy, and we wanted to keep some consistency with regard to the elevation. So they're not usable. They're more aesthetic.
Yeah, so they create a little bit of visual interest. And if there are to be balconies in that courtyard area, there'll be some pretty strict bylaws as to what would be able to be included on those.
Okay. Anyone on the board, does anyone on the board have any questions?
Through the chair?
Me. I heard you, Karen. I'll let you go first.
Oh, I'm sorry. I saw Matthew raised his hand. I can never find my own hand to raise.
I don't know who was first, to be honest.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, Matthew. So, Mr. Rankin, I thought at the beginning of your presentation, you said that you're going to do ventilation in the garage. Is that correct? And but then the only thing I heard after that was window glazing, which yes, addresses the glare, but could you elaborate a little bit more on that, please?
Sure. We had discussed previously whether or not we wanted to have this an open air situation where mechanical ventilation would not be required. And I think there was a question in our own minds as you calculate what, the requirement based on the building code and the international mechanical code, whether or not we could really achieve that with the amount of openness that we could create here, given that half the building is buried in the ground and so on. So that all being said, we came to the conclusion that, based on some of the comments that we heard from the last meeting and the concerns of the abutter, that mechanical ventilation would work well for us here, and that allowed us to enclose the garage levels for the most part. The only open part is going to be on the lower level of Cedar Street. All others are contained. So we were required by code to mechanically ventilate those levels.
Yeah, and Rich, just to clarify, I think that we were, as a team, comfortable with the fact that the open air would pass all of the different codes, but really we're more sensitive to the comments and feedback. So older elevations had that lower level and upper level parking completely open with, you know, bars or louvers. Now that's enclosed. Lower level parking on the Cedar Street side has more of a panelized detail, not open at all. And then the upper level parking has glazed windows that'll actually be able to shield any sort of interior light.
Okay, so both levels will be ventilated, is that correct?
There's a combination on both levels of open air because we're not going to have a door at the entrances.
Fair enough.
The front Cedar Street side will also remain open. On the upper level of parking, the open air will be, you know, the gate access into the covered parking. So it's still not an enclosed garage, but it will be, you know, mechanically enhanced for ventilation.
So there will be mechanical ventilation on both floors, is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay, thank you. Back to you, Matthew. I'm done.
I think Jane has a question.
I see Matthew. Let's go to Matthew and Jane. You can go next. Matthew, go ahead.
Thanks. First of all, I want to thank the applicant for being responsive to the comments that were made. Rob, I've got a question probably for John. Just listening to the concerns about the trees, and it sounds confident that, like, the applicant's confident that they'll grow and they'll survive or thrive. I'm just wondering if we need to worry about that in the conditions, or if it's otherwise covered if something were to fail within, I don't know, a few years.
So through the chair, no, that's not covered in the conditions. So if the board wants to have some type of performance guarantee on that, we can absolutely add conditions. These are just suggested, right? So I don't cover everything that the board might be wanting to include. It's just kind of standard conditions and then what has been discussed. So if the board ever wants to include specific conditions to certain projects on items that might not be in my list, feel free to draft some conditions and we can work on it ahead of time if you want, or in the meeting. But if that's something the board wants to do, absolutely.
Rob, I think it'd be worth having John think about wording there for just ensure that they're set for a number of years.
Yeah, I think on, you know, behalf of the applicant, I think would be certainly open to a condition, you know, related to the health of that screening. We are confident that the trees, you know, specified for those areas will maintain, you know, a good health, but happy to entertain a condition.
So through the chair, before I get started on this drafting, what would the specifics of that condition include? Is the board looking for a bond for the landscaping to guarantee that the property owner will maintain alive plants for 5 years? What are we looking for?
I think that, and I think that's basically what I would call is a reasonable. That's what I would say is reasonable. I don't know if anyone else has any other opinions.
Which would be reasonable, the bond or the guarantee that they would keep it alive for a certain number of time, a certain length of time?
Well, I basically like to make sure to ensure that it is kept alive for 5 years, and then if we need to do that by holding money in the form of a bond, we can. But I don't know how else to secure that it's there's a performance guarantee without the bond. I guess. How else would we do it, John?
Could
Well,
have.
I think.
Sorry, go ahead, Neil.
Yeah, well, I think that the bond has nothing to do with actually securing it. I think that if we had a condition that said that a performance condition with respect to it for whatever number of years, whether we're talking about 1 year or 2 years, that would be enforceable by the building inspector in the event that there was an issue, and then we would have to deal with the building inspector. And if we were not responsive to this condition in the future, then there would be remedies that we would not like, which would be some sort of enforcement action. In an enforcement action, if you find that we're not a good neighbor and we're not keeping up with our obligations, then at that moment in time, you would be able to do something. But I would request that there be no bond with respect to this, that there simply be a condition for performance for, I think that 1 year would be a good amount of time for determining whether or not the plants are going to be established. But we have a landscape architect who could probably answer that a little bit better than the lawyer. But that's what I would request that the board do with respect to that condition.
Yeah, once the plants have grown in that first year, they're either going to live or not within that first year. So I think that's a reasonable amount. If you wanted to make it a little bit longer than that, I think that's understandable. But if 5 years would be well beyond what would be typically the establishment period for this landscape. So I would say a year or two is reasonable and would get the result you're looking for. If it doesn't survive year 1, that's when you're going to know that there's an issue.
So Rob, if I can.
Yeah, go ahead, Matthew.
My original thought was about 3 years, and in part just like I don't know if the plants are going to go in before construction is completed, for instance, and there might be some impact as things are wrapping up. But maybe the condition could be something based on like 2 years post completion of construction or something.
Yeah, John, if we can have a condition without a bond, I think that would suffice.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that the enforcement powers by the zoning enforcement officer for non-criminal disposition would apply to a site plan decision violation.
Yeah, that's.
I'm looking through the zoning right now, so
All right, as you do that, we'll come back to the discussion of this additional condition. But Jane, did you have a comment? Hey, Kathleen, I see your hands raised. We'll get to you in a minute. Jane, did you have something to add?
So through the chair.
Go ahead.
A question for Rich. You mentioned in your discussion earlier a translucent system for some of what could you elaborate on that?
I think the bottom line is that we're going to infill the openings with a glazing system. And I think just the question is whether or not it's clear glass or tinted glass or translucent glass. I think on the Cedar Street side, there would be no reason to perhaps use the translucent unless we wanted to stay consistent. But the thinking was that on the north side, the abutter side, that it may take, it may reduce any glare that may be present, due to the parking activities. I think the sill height of those openings is upwards of 3.5 to 4 feet. Typically headlights aren't shining up in the air, they're shining down at the ground. But there is, typically some overwash and so on. So the idea was that translucent glass may cut down on glare.
Thank you. I think that would be helpful. The second thing, I'm wondering if you have thought about, as far as recycling their trash, there seems to be a lot of discussion about barrels and carting things around. I've seen systems where there is actual chutes where the residents on a certain level can then go to certain designated points and empty their trash in one opening or recycle in another opening, and it would be deposited right into the receptacles in the bottom. Have you given that any thought? That might be helpful for some of the residents and cut down on a lot of barrels being wheeled around.
Yeah, we have given that some thought. The problem with those chutes, that you're actually seeing a lot of these buildings like this go away from that, just because those chutes, inevitably the trash room where they land ultimately becomes really difficult to maintain. It's It's pretty common in a building certainly of this size for the residents to discard their trash. This is meant to be a clean space, clean barrels, and will be monitored as such.
Okay, that's interesting. I haven't heard that before. That was all I had.
Through the chair.
Go ahead, John.
So looking at the zoning, there is a section 210-158 that says whoever violates any provision of this chapter, any of the conditions under which a permit is issued by the Director of Municipal Inspections, or any decision rendered by the Board of Appeals under the provisions of this chapter shall be liable to a fine, et cetera, where each day where it's not done is a separate violation. So it doesn't specifically mention the planning board. Candidly, you have two options. Do a different way of enforcing this, or trying to format a condition that references this section and puts the enforcement power on the Director of Municipal Inspections to enforce this decision similar to 210-158. I don't know if that would fly. I don't know if it's even necessary because the applicant's probably going to keep the landscaping up anyway, but that is an option. But the planning board, from my very quick summary read of the zoning, does not have the ability to do that same daily violation if conditions are not followed, unless explicitly said in the decision. But that might even be questionable.
Okay. All right, before we decide what we're going to do there, Kathleen, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, if you just could say your name and address and
Sure. Kathleen Reel, 8 Cedar Street. I just, first of all, want to thank the planning board for kind of hearing me out and everybody out over the last couple of months, because I know it's been kind of a big topic and everybody's been chatting out solutions and what have you. I also want to thank the applicants for coming back with the changes that they made. But I still just want to touch upon the fact how important this project is, not just to me, but to the whole town of Hopkinton. You know, from Main Street side, it's very aesthetically pleasing. I still feel the building is just too big for the space. It's a 4-story building with 2 levels of parking and 2 apartments above. And I feel like because of all the conversations we had, I know everybody's kind of taking a pause to it and saying, is this really something that's going to work for the town and benefit the town? Is 60 apartments, you know, is this going to work for the town? I don't know. I mean, this building just seems too big to me still. I just don't feel 100% good about it. I don't know how all you folks feel on the planning board, but I don't know if it's really the best thing for the town. I think it looks great from Main Street. I'm not sure about Cedar Street. It is still going to be looming over Cedar Street, looming over my building. I'm not going to have any sunlight. It's just something I think that we kind of need to rethink. I don't know if we have to rush into a decision, but if we do, I think it has to be very well thought out. Like I said, I appreciate the changes they made, but it's not impacting the size of the building. I feel like they're putting a lot onto a small space. And I just hope we're not regretting it 5 years from now. That's, I guess, all I want to say.
So, Kathleen, I appreciate your comments. So as a planning board member, like, I'll give you my opinion. We have, property owners have rights, and we have to uphold the bylaws the best we can and do what we can do within the rules to do what's best for the town. We can't deny an applicant just because we don't feel good about it. So that's just a matter of fact. I I will give you my opinion. Everybody on the call is, I think it is massive. I think a 4-story building opposite our post office will seem huge. I think it is very big. I think there will be a lot of residents that will not like such a massive building right on the corner of our downtown intersection, but that's not my, that's not my really purview as on the planning board. I don't get to decide that we should have that in the town or not. The property owner has rights and they have to adhere to the zoning guidelines. And we, as a board, need to enforce those. So that's what we're trying to do. But I totally understand your sentiment.
And I understand, and I know that Mr. Bingham had mentioned, as of right, and I just don't get that, because when I'm reading the zoning bylaws, I don't see how it could be of right, because it says that a mixed use building comprised of retail space on the first floor, an office or residential dwelling units on the second and third floors. This first floor is mostly a parking garage. It's not all retail. And also, I guess another question I have is the retail designated space, is that definitely going to be retail? Is it going to be like a Sweet Greens restaurant, or is it going to be another like Hallmark store? Is it guaranteed to be retail? Because I know that's what the town really is looking forward to. We're looking forward to destinations. So I guess that's a two-part question. First of all, can the applicants guarantee that that retail space is going to be retail, meaning we walk in and can buy something? There's a cash register there.
Can guarantee that it's going to be retail. In fact, the building inspector and the planner can guarantee the same thing, because we're not going to get approved for a use, whatever that use ends up being, unless it's retail. So if we tried to put some sort of industrial use in there, it's not going to be allowed. We won't get a building permit. We won't get a certificate of occupancy. And the decision that comes from this board is going to set forth very expressly that the use on the first floor must be retail, and we intend to abide by that.
Okay. That's good, because I think the town will be happy about that. But how about the bylaws that says the mixed use building comprised of retail space on the first floor?
I think you're getting into, John, it's not completely clear to me either, because there's such a grade to the land of like how we how the exact calculations of what first floor versus second floor. But
Yeah, I was just looking at what they said, like level 1 when they had their plans, and when I'm like, I just want to understand it, I guess, more than anything.
Yeah, so
I
through
don't
the
get
chair,
it.
the intent wasn't to have the entire first floor space as retail. That's not what the zoning is saying. The intent of the zoning is that the ground floor of any building, whatever is on the floor that pedestrians can enter the building from the street, will be retail and not residential. So that you're not having apartments on the ground level. You can have, or you're not having offices on the ground level, right? You want uses that are going to attract foot traffic. You don't want offices that are going to have people go in and then, stay for 8 hours and never come out, or residences. Those are on the upper levels. So you have the retail on the lower level.
Okay.
So whether the first level is next to Central Public House or the first level is next to the intersection, it doesn't really matter. That's the first level. And then we go from there.
Okay, I just took it that the whole first level had to be retail.
No,
but
it just said
I
that there has
understand.
to be retail space on the first level, and that residential
Okay.
office space has to be on the floors above.
Okay, thank you. I just didn't understand that. So when Mr. Bingham had said as of right, I just kind of looked at my notes and I wasn't sure how that worked out. So I just, the whole size of the building, I'm not happy about being in complete darkness with no sunlight. And I just think that it's going to be a building that's going to be really large. So I know there's not, like you said, there's not much you can do about it, but thank you.
Thanks, Kathleen. Thanks for coming to the meeting. Is there anyone else in the public comment or on the board that has any questions or comments? All right. I'm going to try to make our way through the process of outlined in our agenda here. So I'm going to start on section 3.7 for people following along, especially on the board. That makes sense, right, John? Just like to start by going over the decision criteria.
Yes.
All right. I believe I need to read all of these aloud, and maybe John, you can.
So you don't have to read the decision criteria aloud. You just have to read the conditions and the findings.
Okay.
The standard, these site plan standards are in the zoning, so those are public information.
Does anyone have any questions about the decision criteria on the board? Or the stormwater management permit 3.7.2? All right, there's no requested waivers for the major project site plan and stormwater management permit. Should I go through the stormwater management permit first, go through the findings, then the conditions, and then do the project second? All right. Section 3.9.2 for the stormwater management permit. We're going to start with the stormwater management permit. I think that makes sense. The proposed work will comply with the Hopkinton stormwater regulations. That's the proposed finding. And so the proposed conditions for stormwater management permit is 3.10.2. So I need to read all these aloud. So this is going to take a couple minutes. So just bear with me as I read this. All erosion and sediment controls should comply with the following performance criteria. Minimize total area of disturbance and protect natural features in soil. Sequence activities to minimize simultaneous areas of disturbance. Mass clearings and grading of the entire site shall be avoided. Minimize peak rate of runoff in accordance with the Massachusetts stormwater standards. Minimize soil erosion and control sedimentation during construction, provided that prevention of erosion is preferred over sedimentation control. Divert uncontaminated water around disturbed areas. Maximize groundwater recharge. Install and maintain all erosion and sediment control measures in accordance with the manufacturer's specifications and good engineering practices. Prevent off-site transport of sediment. Protect and manage on and off-site material storage areas, overburden and stockpiles of dirt, borrow areas, or other areas used solely by the permitted projects are considered a part of the project. Comply with applicable federal, state, and local laws and regulations, including waste disposal, sanitary, sewer, or septic system regulations, and air quality requirements, including dust control. Prevent significant alteration of habitats mapped by the Massachusetts Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program as endangered, threatened, or of special concern, estimated habitats of rare wildlife, and certified vernal pools, and priority habitats of rare species from the proposed activities. Institute interim and permanent stabilization measures which shall be instituted on a disturbed area as soon as practicable, but no more than 14 days after construction activity has temporarily or permanently ceased on that portion of the site. Properly manage on-site construction and waste materials. Prevent off-site vehicle tracking of sediments. Dust shall be controlled at the site. Divert off-site runoff from highly erodible soils and steep slopes to stable areas. The part two of this. The project should comply with the following erosion and sediment control requirements. Prior to any land disturbance areas, let me restart. Prior to any land disturbance activities commencing on the site, the developer shall physically mark limits of no land disturbance on the site with tape, signs, or orange construction fence so that workers can see the areas to be protected. The physical marker shall remain in place until a certificate of completion has been issued. Appropriate erosion and sediment control measures shall be installed prior to soil disturbance. Measures shall be taken to control erosion within the project area. Sediment and runoff shall be trapped and retained within the project area. Wetland areas and surface waters shall be protected from sediment. Sediment shall be removed once the volume reaches 1/4 to 1/2 the height of a hay bale. Sediment shall be removed from the silt fence prior to reaching the load-bearing capacity of the silt fence, which may be lower than 1/4 to 1/2 the height. Sediment from sediment traps or sedimentation ponds shall be removed when design capacity has been reduced by 50%. Soil stockpiles must be stabilized or covered at the end of each workday. Stockpile side slopes shall not be greater than 2:1. All stockpiles shall be surrounded by sediment controls. Disturbed areas remaining idle for more than 14 days shall be stabilized with seeding, wood chips, bark mulch, tarpaulins, or any other approved methods. For active construction areas such as borrow or stockpile areas, roadway improvements in areas within 50 feet of a building under construction, a perimeter sediment control system shall be installed and maintained to contain soil. A tracking pad or other approved stabilization method shall be constructed at all entrance/exit points of the site to reduce the amount of soil carried onto roadways and off the site. Wilson Street and Cedar Street in the vicinity of the project shall be swept as needed throughout the construction process. Permanent seeding shall be undertaken in the spring from March through May, and in late summer and early fall from August to October 15th. During the peak summer months and in the fall after October 15th, when seeding is found to be impractical, appropriate temporary stabilization shall be applied. Permanent seeding may be undertaken during the summer if plans provide for adequate mulching and watering. All slopes steeper than 3:1 height to I think that's H colon V, 33.3%, as well as perimeter dikes, sediment basins or traps and embankments must, upon completion, be immediately stabilized with sod, seed, and anchor straw mulch or other approved stabilization measures. Areas outside of the perimeter sediment control system must not be disturbed. Temporary sediment trapping devices must not be removed until permanent stabilization is established in all contributory drainage areas. All temporary erosion and sediment control measures shall be removed after the final site stabilization. Disturbed soil areas resulting from the removal of temporary measures shall be permanently stabilized within 30 days of removal. A minimum of 7 days prior to the start of construction, a detailed construction sequence shall be submitted to the principal planner by the site contractor for review and approval. The approved construction sequence shall be followed throughout the course of the construction and shall be altered only with prior review by and written approval from the principal planner. A signed copy of the stormwater pollution prevention plan shall be provided to the board prior to the building permit. Per 6.0.k.2, the SWPPP must include the signed notice of intent and approval letter. All required stormwater pollution prevention plan, stormwater construction site inspection reports shall be submitted to the principal planner within 14 days of each inspection. An adequate stockpile of erosion control materials should be on site at all times for emergency or routine replacement and shall include materials to repair or replace silt fences, hay bales, stone filters, berms, or any other devices planned for use during construction. Soil testing and excavation of the site's stormwater basins must be observed by the board's engineer prior to laying loam and seed. The applicant developer shall notify the principal planner at least 48 hours, weekends and holidays excluded prior to the soil testing and/or excavation to allow for adequate time to coordinate these observations. All stormwater basins must be cleaned once the site is stabilized. All stormwater basins shall be cleaned prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy. Prior to the issuance of a building permit, the applicant developer shall submit a revised stormwater management report as referenced in the peer review letter from Weston and Sampson dated December 11th, 2024. So at this time, I think I'd like to vote on the motion, the findings for the stormwater management permit. I'd like to entertain a motion that the board accept and approve the findings previously read aloud for the stormwater management permit application?
So moved.
Thanks,
Second.
Jane. Is that Matthew? Thanks, Matthew. Roll call vote. Elise Malowski,
Yes.
Matthew Ronka,
Yes.
Michael King,
Yes.
Parker Hap,
Yes.
Jane Moran,
Yes.
Karen Wills,
Yes.
Vikasath Prati,
Yes.
and Rob Benson is a yes. So at this time, I think I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the stormwater management permit. I'd like to entertain a motion that the board approve the stormwater management permit with the following conditions as they were previously read aloud by the chair.
So moved.
Second.
All right, roll call vote. Elise Malowski,
Yes.
Matthew Ronka,
Yes.
Michael King,
Yes.
Parker Hap,
Yes.
Jane Moran,
Yes.
Karen Wills,
Yes.
Vikasath Prati,
Yes.
and Rob Benson is a yes. All right. So I'm going to go back to section 3.9.1, the proposed findings for the major project site plan. So this is on page 22, section 3.9.1. The proposed major project site plan conforms to the site plan standards as described in section 210-136.1 of the zoning bylaws. Number two, pursuant to section 210-124.1, the development triggers site plan review for the alteration of a parking area. As such, the development is required to provide at least 10% of the total spaces. 100 spaces required as EVSE installed parking spaces. 10 parking spaces, or 20% of the total spaces is EV-ready parking spaces. 26 parking spaces. The applicant has stated that they will provide 10 EVSE installed parking spaces as part of the proposed work.
Through the chair.
Go ahead, John.
I think that might be a typo because 20% of 100 is not 26.
Yeah. Let me just restate that. 20% of the total spaces is EV-ready parking, which would be 20 parking spaces. But it's really, I guess, the main point is the applicant has stated that they will provide 10 EVSE installed parking spaces as part of the proposed work. All right, so I need to read all the proposed conditions. And John, at the end, I'm gonna ask, maybe if we can add a condition about the landscaping and the landscaping. I don't know exactly how to, I heard what you said. I still don't know the best way to include it, but we'll try to work it out at the end. Let me read the rest of it and we'll go from there. All right, 3.10.1, major project site plan proposed conditions. The Director of Municipal Inspections inspects projects under constructions for compliance with approved decision of site plan review. This includes the driveway, roadway, and infrastructure construction shown on the plan, if applicable. If the Director of Municipal Inspections determines at any time before or during construction that a registered professional engineer or other such outside professional is required to assist with the inspections of the stormwater management system or any other component of the site plan, the applicant shall be responsible for the cost of those inspections. All construction activities shall adhere to applicable local, state, and federal laws and regulations regarding noise, vibration, dust, sedimentation, and the use of interference with or blocking of town roads. The applicant shall be responsible for mitigating all construction-related impacts, including erosion, siltation, and dust control. The applicant shall maintain all portions of any public way used for construction access free of soil, mud, or debris deposited due to use by construction vehicles associated with the project, and shall regularly sweep such areas as directed by the Director of Municipal Inspections in consultation with the Department of Public Works Director. Number 4. The applicant shall regularly remove construction trash and debris from the site in accordance with good construction practice in the construction management plan. No tree stumps, demolition material, trash, or debris shall be burned or buried on the site. All exterior lighting within the development project, whether shown on the approved site plan or required by the Massachusetts State Building Code, shall be shielded, directed downward and not upward or outward, shall not spill onto adjacent property. All fixed mechanical equipment on the site shall be screened from view from the ground. Such screening shall be sufficient in the opinion of the Director of Municipal Inspections. If construction has not commenced within 3 years of the date of filing of the site plan decision with the town clerk, approval shall be automatically rescinded, unless such time is extended by the board. For the purposes of this condition, the term commenced shall mean commencement of site work. Construction may occur only between the hours of 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday through Friday, and Saturdays between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. pursuant to Chapter 141, Article 1 of the Town of Hopkinton General Bylaws. The applicant shall submit final as-built plans to the planning board prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy. This as-built submission shall include an as-built drawing that depicts the as-built mean grade and the elevation of the highest point of the roof. This plan shall be stamped by a registered land surveyor. Number 10. The applicant developer shall provide the principal planner with a project point of contact and contact information prior to the issuance of a building permit. This point of contact information should be kept current through correspondence to the principal planner until the final certificate of occupancy is issued or construction is otherwise considered complete. A completed signed construction management plan shall be submitted to the planning board prior to the commencement of any site work. The applicant should also submit a complete final revised plan set which incorporates all of the modifications made during the public hearing process and any required in this decision. Number 12, a completed signed long-term operation and maintenance plan shall be submitted to the planning board prior to the commencement of construction. This can be combined with a construction management plan if preferred by the applicant. A signed illicit discharge statement shall be provided to the planning board prior to construction. Erosion and sedimentation controls shall be implemented during the construction period in accordance with the approved site plan and construction management plan. If they are found to be inadequate, the applicant shall immediately correct any deficiencies. Planning board shall receive a sign-off confirming that the site contractor and any major subcontractors that have received construction management plan prior to the commencement of any site work. In the event the applicant developer elects to not incorporate a snow melt system into the design of the project, the property owner shall be responsible for snow removal. In circumstances where snow removal has accumulated on site to the extent that the required number of parking spaces is not available to tenants and others served by the uses contained on the property owner shall be responsible for removing snow from the site and disposed off-site at an appropriate facility at the property owner's expense. The applicant shall include a note on the final revised plan set that stated the proposed drainage system shall connect to the existing drainage system within Cedar Street at a manhole. Trash removal from the subject site shall be serviced by a private trash hauler and shall not be the responsibility of the town of Hopkinton. A copy of plan and details of the final lighting controls for the subject site shall be submitted to the planning board prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy. The board may secure a third-party review by a qualified professional at the expense of the applicant developer to determine if the proposed plan and the details of the lighting control complies with applicable laws and standards. Prior to the issuance of a building permit, the applicant developer shall submit a revised stormwater management report as referenced in the peer review letter from Weston and Sampson dated December 11th, 2024, page 19. Prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy, the applicant developer shall install the faceplates for the signalized crossing push buttons which are missing on both pedestrian posts on the northeast corner of the intersection adjacent to the site. If this missing equipment has not been installed in conjunction with the downtown corridor Master D project at that time. So we're looking to add a proposed condition number 22 condition.
Can I speak to that for 1 second?
Sure.
So we were talking about whether or not a condition under a site plan approval would be enforceable in an enforcement action under 210, 155 to 158. So I would just direct the board to section 210, 137 of the bylaw, which is the site plan area. And I'll just read what it says, because at the end of the day, it is enforceable in an enforcement action. This is at least my reading. For any construction project or change in use that requires site plan review, no building permit may issue unless and until the applicant has complied with the provisions of this article. The conditions, modifications, and restrictions contained in the decision of site plan review shall be referenced in, incorporated into, and made an express condition of such building permit. So in other words, a violation of a site plan condition is a violation of the building permit because those conditions are incorporated into the building permit. And therefore, and so what I'm trying to conclude here is that the idea of a bond is not necessary because we would be subject to the regular procedure in an enforcement action, which, as everyone knows, is not something, no one wants to be before the ZBA on an enforcement action. And I think that is motivation enough for us to keep those plants alive, in addition to us wanting to have a beautiful building and doing it nonetheless.
Through the chair.
Go ahead, John.
My one concern with Mr. Bingham's argument for that is that once the building permit is issued and then a certificate of compliance is issued or a certificate of occupancy is issued, and then that year starts, that building permit is no longer enforceable because the certificate of occupancy has already been issued. So I understand what you're saying, but it's going to be very hard for an argument to be made to enforce a building permit that has not been complied with a year after the certificate of occupancy has been issued.
Right, except that the performance obligations are going to be expressly set forth for some period of time into the future. So unlike most situations that I think that we're thinking about, which come and go almost upon the issuance of the building permit, this one will very clearly say after some certain date, and we can say that's a completion of construction. That was what was suggested by someone, and I think that that's a good idea. I don't know how I would argue against being bound by that before the ZBA. I don't think I could. And I sort of believed what I said to be true without having read those words. But now that I'm reading these particular words, I have no doubt that the town has recourse against my client should my client fail to do what it has promised to do with respect to landscaping, for whatever period of time you decide.
I'm of the mindset we try to put together a condition. John, this is my opinion, and anyone else on the board can chime in. We put together a condition that we think protects us or protects the landscaping the best we can for a period of 3 years, and word it in that I liked your suggestion of like the way that ZBA language, the ZBA has authority. If we can somehow word a condition that way and not require a bond, I think that would be about the best we should shoot for, would be my guess.
So that's fine through the chair. I can try and word something. I've got something half written right now, but I just want to be completely transparent with the board. I guess what I was getting at with saying all of that is this planning board can set case law on this situation should things go super sideways, right? I don't think the applicant is going to let things die, right? It's going to benefit them to have the landscaping look as nice as possible. So I don't think this is an issue. But if the board does make this condition and the applicant appeals and it goes to court, I don't know of any case law that talks about planning board including a condition for enforcement with like daily violations. So maybe that's something that needs to be adjudicated, but I don't think that's going to happen. I just want to make the board clear that like that is a possibility in drafting this condition, that should things go completely sideways, there may be some legal recourse that might need to be taken.
John and Mr. Chair, if I may, I think that Matt had mentioned a year and a half from time of planting is certainly indicative of the trees germinating and kind of overall health of the trees. Does that sound about what you said, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, typically that's a year is a typical guarantee period where you would understand whether the plant was in the right spot or had the right soil or was getting watered enough. Like you'd know if the plant was going to survive after that year. If you wanted to, push it out year and a half, 2 years, whatever, to make it, but a year should give you the indication of whether it's going to survive or not.
Okay. Albeit a fairly significant screening along the side of the building, if we were to come with a reasonable amount based on the value of those plantings, I'd be willing to do a bond for up to a year and a half. From the time of maybe certificate of occupancy. By that time, it'd certainly be well planted, and then you'd have a year and a half after that.
I'm not an expert on trying to ensure these plantings. I'm looking for some advice. John, anyone on the board, anyone?
So yeah, generally the way that we handle this is through bonds, but the applicant said they were hoping to not do a bond. So we were just trying to figure out a roundabout way to do enforcement. If they're looking to do a bond, that simplifies it. But otherwise, I'm not, and I don't want to make it seem like the applicant is going to fail to keep these plantings alive. I don't think that's a problem at all. Just
I don't think it is.
That we're going into territory where conditions may require things that might not be legally allowed. I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not super sure about all that. But we usually handle these things through bonds, to answer your question.
Matthew, I see your hands raised.
Yeah, I mean, if we can agree on a bond, I think that's the most straightforward. I like 2 years better than a year and a half if we can meet there, just to avoid any potential season issues of when that 1.5 years starts. But I can take other people's opinion there. Is there a single or certificate of occupancy being issued, or is it per unit here or per building, or how's that treated? Just since we're talking about when that's issued.
Yeah, I think
if it was condos, it would be a per unit situation, but I think there's one CO and I'm not 100% on that, but I think I'm right.
yeah, that's a building department.
What do you think, Brendan?
Occasionally it's done by floor, but more typically by building.
So if through the chair, if the board were willing, you could just say the final certificate of occupancy. Or the first certificate of occupancy. Yeah.
I think the final one addresses the concern about potentially additional building and disruption happening that would impact the trees from the initial date.
So through the chair, I don't think that would be realistic because the certificate of occupancies would be for the internal units. So it's not like they're going to build a half of a building and then it's going to be more of like they'll build the shell, then the interior units, and then the retail tenant will build it out and then get a certificate of occupancy for that unit. So I think the point of the first certificate of occupancy means that the building is livable or usable from that point. It's just a matter of finishing the units and getting tenants in all the units.
Okay.
Through the chair? Rob?
Go ahead, Karen.
Sorry. Yeah, I still haven't figured out how to do the raise your hand thing, but I would support Matthew's proposal of 2 years and the final occupancy. I appreciate John's perspective on the and the doling out of the occupancies. I mean, maybe it could be, notwithstanding the retail ones, because those will probably take a little bit longer to fill. But I think we're looking to protect the people, the abutters and things, and just and I appreciate the applicants putting up a bond, and I'd like to hear what their perspective is on Matthew's proposal. But I do think that that's a good one. So,
can I just chime in there on the just sort of from a construction standpoint? and Brendan, you can weigh in here too, but I would think when we're going for our first certificate of occupancy, which could end up being our only certificate of occupancy, the site is going to need to be buttoned up to the point where, you know, erosion controls are satisfied. We've got paving in place, landscaping is in place. That would all be, that could all be conditioned that it would have to be done with no further disturbance as part of that first certificate of occupancy, and the clock could start then, so to speak. If we're going to have a retailer come in and do a certificate of occupancy that is follows some months later or a year later or two, we don't know that the timing on all of these things. That's a harder time frame, I think, to ascertain and understand. But we should need to have the site buttoned up at our first certificate of occupancy, which in my mind would be the proper time to start the period that we're talking about here.
And Matt, kind of along those lines, the only thing I'd add is maybe a conditional inspection, when that screening has been planted, and then a year and a half from its initial planting, or something along those lines.
Through the chair, I would also just weigh in on the final CO. Sometimes it happens where developers don't fit out all the units. It's actually not financially feasible to finish a condo unit or an apartment, and then they don't build it. It's just a shell. And so if it's the final CO and they're waiting on that one, they could indefinitely maintain, not that they shouldn't indefinitely maintain the landscaping, but they would potentially never get their bond back unless that unit is developed.
I think really, I think we want to be cognizant of the abutters, but I think we're really going above, I think it's gonna, I agree that the developer applicant has no vested interest in letting the landscaping go to die. That just would be bad business practice. So I want to come up with a reasonable solution here, and I think if the applicant is willing to agree to 2 years kind of performance guarantee on the landscaping from the date of the first certificate of occupancy, I think that's what I would like the condition to be. Can the members of the board live with that?
Specific to the Cedar Street screening, correct?
Can you just repeat that? So I can get it all.
I'll get Brendan, I'll get back to that. So I would like it to be basically a performance guarantee for 2 years for the landscaping from the date of the first certificate of occupancy, and a bond to maintain that landscaping. And I don't know how anyone else feels. I'm okay if it's just the Cedar Street, the side that we have this bond for, but I don't know if anyone else on the board has any other opinions. That's like what from my perspective, that's what the butter is, who we're really trying to protect. But does anyone else have any thoughts?
Through the chair, from Rob, from the Cedar Street side, you mean the north side of the building?
Yes.
Okay.
With the one that's abutting 8 Cedar Street.
Yeah, I would be fine with that, with what you proposed.
Through the chair,
Go ahead, Vic.
how many units are we looking at the north side of the building? I'm just out curious about it. Can somebody? I mean, I know I've seen the plans, but I didn't count it. But I'm just trying to understand how many units are we looking at that
that have windows on that side. I don't know.
So
Probably roughly a third. Just kind of best guess based on the shape of the building.
Yeah, are we talking about units on the north side of the building only?
Yes. I would prefer a number. I know a third, but it's difficult to calculate that precisely for me.
So let's see, on the third level, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and on the second level, there is the same, so 10 units.
10 units. Okay. Thank you.
Michael, you've been waiting patiently.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking about like, yeah. So I guess my question is like, how come you guys would be okay with like a year and a half for a bond and not 2 years?
Specific to the Cedar Street side, the additional 6 months isn't, you know, that's not a game. It's not a deal breaker for us.
Gotcha.
I was just using the year and a half because that's more than ample time for what Matt had suggested.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, the bonds we're going to have a significant investment in the project. The bonds are just a little bit of like a paper cut, but understand, you know, that was an effort just for peace of mind for the board and to have it well conditioned. We're agreeable to that.
Vic, go ahead.
Thank you. Just to confirm, when we say first OC, certificate of occupancy, right? Are we talking only from the northern side of it, or is it the entire building anywhere of it? Or in the same direction, when we said the final occupancy, are we saying that, you know, all the 10 units, when all the 10 units get occupied, since then are we requesting this 2-year bond? Just trying to understand.
I think there's just general confusion, and the reality is realistically, the outside of the building, the whole shell of the building needs to be built and done before the first certificate of occupancy can be issued. It's not like they're gonna have just the side of the building facing abutting 8 Cedar Street is going to be done first, and then it's just going to be construction on the, like, it's going to be dirt up against the intersection. So I guess I don't understand your question, to be honest.
I mean, I was more turning towards, you know, they build the shell, agreed, they do that, but just, you know, it also depends upon the kind of prospective buyers and the kind of which side of the building that you have more demand, and you get the first, certification of occupancy. So that's what I was trying to understand. If at all, is there a way which we can put it across, saying that at least from the northern side, what are the 10 units? If one of them gets the first OC or whatever it is, then just to protect the concerns of the abutters, that's all. I mean, if I'm clear enough, or you want me to elaborate?
I think I get your, I think I understand your sentiment. I think that's really overkill.
Okay. Yeah, it's not a sentiment, just a comment. I'm just trying to understand. That's all. Is there a possibility? That's all.
I like the 2-year bond, Rob. I think that's good for the landscaping on Cedar Street.
Yeah, I tend to agree.
I do as well.
Vic, to your question, I think realistically, if it's this is going to be condos, correct? These aren't apartments, right? Am I correct in that they're condos, or are they going to be month or rentals?
Rentals.
Okay.
Oh, rentals. Okay.
But it's going to be based off of market demand, which like they may have a build schedule of like which ones they're going to outfit first, but also the desire of the consumer of which ones they want to occupy first will drive that.
That's right.
I'm trying to buy a little time, John, to see if you have any.
I have a draft condition if you're ready for it.
I am.
All right. So the applicant / developer shall maintain all landscaping as shown on the approved plan along the northern property line for a period of 2 years after the issuance of the first certificate of occupancy. The applicant developer shall submit a performance guarantee consistent with section 210-138 of the zoning bylaws. This performance guarantee shall be submitted to the planning board prior to the issuance of the first building permit. So section 210-138 just basically outlines site plan performance guarantees. They have to have an prepared by their engineer, bring it to the board approves the amount, and then we move forward from there.
I think that sounds good to me. So at this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the major project site plan findings. So I'd like to entertain a motion that the board accept and approve the findings as previously read aloud for the major project site plan applications by the chair and by our principal planner, John Gelsich.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Thanks, everybody. Roll call vote. Elise Mayalowski,
Yes.
Matthew Ronca,
Yes.
Michael King,
Yes.
Parker Hap,
Yes.
Jane Moran,
Yes.
Karen Wills,
Yes.
Vikas Prati,
Yes.
and Robert Benson is a yes. All right. And so now section 3.12.2.1. I'd like to entertain a motion that the board approve the major project site plan with the following conditions as they were previously read aloud by the chair and our principal planner.
So moved.
Second.
Thanks, Matthew. Thanks, Parker. Roll call vote. Elise Mayalowski,
Yes.
Matthew Ronca,
Yes.
Michael King,
Yes.
Parker Hap,
Yes.
Jane Moran,
Yes.
Karen Wills,
Yes.
Vikas Prati,
Yes.
and Robert Benson is a yes. Is there anything left to do before closing the public hearing? All right. At this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to close the public hearing for 48-52. Hold on. What are we calling the project?
4852 Main Street, 6
40, yeah, 48-52 Main Street, 6 Cedar Street.
So moved.
Second.
Thanks, Vic. Roll call vote. Elise Mayalowski,
Yes.
Matthew Ronca,
Yes.
Michael King,
Oh, yes. Kenny Merrill. Yes.
yep, Parker Hap,
Yes.
Jane Moran,
Yes.
Karen Wills,
Yes.
Vikas Prati,
Yes.
and Rob Benson is a yes. All right. I think we are, good luck.
So through the chair, I'll draft that decision. It's due on the 13th to be filed with the town clerk. So I'll draft that decision and have you come sign it. And then
Okay.
We will send it to the applicant.
All right. Thanks, John.
Thank you all.
Great. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thanks. Good night.
Good night. So we don't have anything else on our agenda besides the next meetings. So unless anybody wants to talk about their New Year's activities, I think I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn for this evening.
So moved.
Second.
Thanks,
Okay.
Matthew. All right, roll call vote. Elise Mayalowski,
Yes.
Matthew Ronca,
Yes.
Michael King,
Yes.
Parker Hap,
Point of order, I would have discussed my break had you said additional discussion, but yes.
all right, Jane Moran,
Yes.
Karen Wills,
Yes.
Vikas Prati,
Yes.
and Rob Benson is a yes. All right, thanks, everybody. Difficult project to get through tonight, so thank you.
Good job.
Have a nice evening.
All right,
Good
bye-bye.
night.
Bye, everyone.